system. So first structure, again after the ovary that we are going to look at is the fallopian tubes, or they are also called as oviducts. Now fallopian tubes, these are kind of 10 to 12 centimeter long tube, uh, extending from the periphery of each ovary to the uterus. That is, around the ovary there is some structure of the fallopian tube until the uterus, where they attach in terms of tubular structure. It consists of different substructures. That first one is infundibulum, which is a broad funnel shaped proximal part. Proximal is the front part of the infundibulum close to the ovary. So this particular diagram, I guess I have to scroll quite up. So this particular part is known as infundibulum, and next to it is ampulla, which is slightly elongated. Ampulla is nothing but, like we had seen, kind of ampulla structure in the vas deferens as well, or vasa differentia. So there also we had a kind of extension of the ampulla, or extension of the tubular structure. That's what is ampulla. And then the next one, again the similar tubular structure, is called as isthmus, and together these three will make the fallopian tube structure. And this is not exactly how it is shown here. Ideally it is just covering all around the ovary through this fimbri structure. So again this representation is not the right one to let you know the exact position and exact structure how it is located. Rather, these fimbriae, they are all around the ovary, so that it's holding like that ovary like a ball, like inside a cup. So that's how the ovaries they are located. Sorry, that's how the fallopian tubes and that infundibulum and fimbriae structures are located. So infundibulum is a broad funnel shaped like organ, or part of the organ, and the proximal part of infundibulum is very close to ovary. Its margin bears a motile finger-like projection. Motile because they are like kind of moving, and finger-like projection. These are like extended projections or outgrowths of the villi or microvilli-like structures. So that is called as fimbriae. And just these fingers are called fimbriae. The whole structure that is funnel-like, that is infundibulum. Its opening into body cavity is called as ostium. Now, the opening of the infundibulum into that body cavity is known as ostium. Now, the beating of cilia of fimbriae, that is this fimbriae structure or finger-like projection, they have a lot of ciliated cells on its surface. So, the beating of cilia of fimbriae directs the ovum, which is released into the infundibulum. So, as soon as the ovaries release the ova structure or the ovum, then this infundibulum will hold this because of the cilia structure, not hold as in hold in its like kind of like we hold the hand or hold something, but it just keeps that ova at its place, and then it will be released, or it will be allowed to pass through the infundibulum, which is like a tube like structure, and then it enters in towards the uterus. So that is the infundibulum. Ampulla is nothing but just a long, wide, thin-walled part of the fallopian tube next to infundibulum. It's just a little wider, and that's why it is called as ampulla. Otherwise, it will be still part of like a simple fallopian tube. Isthmus, it is the short, narrow, and thick-walled portion. And there are reasons why this is thin-walled and thick-walled. Obviously, because when the fertilization has to happen, it happens at this junction, which we'll see further, and that is why it has to be ready for accepting the sperm, then the fertilization and so on. That's why they are like kind of thin walled and thick walled structures, also for easier movement through the passage of the fallopian tube. So that these are the structures. So isthmus, short, narrow, thick walled portion of the fallopian tube, and then the uterine part, which is ultimately passes through the uterine wall and opens into the uterus. So that is the These are the four parts as such, majorly three. Uterine part we don't really say a part, but it's just an opening which opens the fallopian tube into the uterus. Functions. Most important function is to convey the ovum or the egg from the ovary to the uterus, not to the uterus directly. It obviously has to get fertilized first in the fallopian tube and then it goes further. So the fertilization of the ovum takes place in the upper portion, that is this junction, ampulla and isthmus junction of the fallopian tube. So that's where the fertilization happens. And then once fertilized, then it enters into the uterus part. Any question here in the fallopian tube? I don't know if I mentioned, but of course, these fallopian tubes, they are also called as oviducts because these are duct-like or tube-like structures carrying the ova, so they are also called as oviducts. So it is nothing but the fallopian tubes. Then the next structure that we are going to look at is the uterus. In common language, we also call it as a womb. It is a hollow, inverted, pear-shaped structure with thick muscular wall. Now, again, like I had mentioned while we were looking at the general structure of the uterus, it is usually shown in a triangular shape, right? Because that's the section, but it is not the section that we need to know. It's rather the whole structure we should know, which is like kind of C-shaped structure, and which is like an inverted pear shape in terms of its arrangement with very thick muscular wall. Thick muscular walls, this is obvious because when the child or the baby is growing inside the mother's uterus, it has to hold that structure in terms of pressure as well as the weight very well, and that's why these structures of the uterus has to be really strong. That's why the thick muscular wall lies in the pelvic cavity between urinary bladder and the rectum. So urinary bladder is kind of on front side, and the rectum is at the back side. So that is where in between these two, the uterus is aligned, attached to the body wall by a double fold of ligaments, that is mesometrium. Body wall is the cavity within which the uterus is lying. To that body cavity, it is attached with a double fold of ligaments, which is known as mesometrium. uh, Again, this is nothing but to hold the uterus in its place, otherwise it will be just floating around if it is not held by some structure, and that is why this double fold of ligament, that is mesometrium, is required. Shape, this is the regular or normal shape when it is not even like in the menstruation phases. Like obviously it will be in menstruation phases, but not in the increased size, the normal size, and surely not in the pregnancy, in case of pregnancy. So a normal size is 8 centimeter long, 5 centimeter wide, and 2 centimeter thick. Now you imagine this 8 centimeter long, it's not big at all, right? And when it grows bigger in terms of during the pregnancy, imagine the size. So it has to be that elastic as well as it has to be that thick in terms of its muscular composition of the wall. So like 8 centimeter is hardly like a palm length, so it's not that big as well otherwise. So that is the physical dimension. It contains four parts. The upper wide part. Now here comes that triangular shape that in explanation this will be helpful. That upper part of the triangle will be known as the fundus. That is the upper wide dome shaped part that receives the fallopian tube. So on each side the fallopian tubes are being received by this fundus part. Then cornua, that is the upper corners where the oviducts enter the uterus. Oviducts is again the fallopian tubes where they enter that portion, the corners, that is called as cornua. And the whole structure on the top is known as fundus. So obviously cornua will be part of your fundus structure. Then body, or also known as corpus of the uterus, is the main portion, that is the inner part, and then the cervix, which is the lower narrow part that projects into the vagina later. So let me show you these things in the diagram. So this particular openings, these are the cornua, and this part, upper part, is the fundus. So this is cornua, where the fallopian tube will open into the uterus. This is fundus. This is the actual body, and this is the cervix. Yeah, that ultimately opens into the vaginal structure. So that is how the uterus is present, and that's where this shape is helpful. Now, three layers, that is endometrium, myometrium, and perimetrium. Endo is the innermost layer, that is the inner lining of the uterus. Mesometrium is the from outer wall to inner wall, whatever is present in terms of tissues, that is myometrium, and the outermost wall is perimetrium. These are the three walls of this uterus structure. Yeah, so the cavity of cervix is called as cervical canal, and it is just 2.5 centimeter long tube. It communicates above with the body of the uterus by the aperture called internal OS. It communicates above with the body, means the cervical canal will communicate with the body of the uterus through an aperture which is known as OS, while the vagina below the opening. So on the top side, so uterus, cervix, and vagina. That's how the arrangement is. So the kind of opening or the aperture between your uterus and the cervix is known as the internal OS, and the one between the vagina and cervix, that is known as the external OS. I haven't found what this OS is, but I assume this is the orifice. OS is usually the short form for the orifice. Orifice means opening. So I guess it is the same thing. And the glands of the cervical canal will secrete the mucus. So during the like even during the sexual intercourse, or during the birth of the baby, in all of these cases, mucus plays very important role, and that is why the glands, which is the uh, present in this inner lining of the cervical canal or the cervix structure, they will be secreting the mucus-like substance. Cervical mucus is responsible for providing lubrication during sexual intercourse, helping the transport of the sperm. Now, again, in the last like class, we had looked at the movement of the uh, like the vaginal structure as well as the cervical structure, so that the contraction relaxation will happen, and the movement of the sperm happens towards the uterus or towards the fallopian tube through the cervical canal, and that's where the mucus will be helpful. Increased response to estrogen. Now, because of the presence of the mucus, the estrogen is kind of like the increase, it will show increased response in terms of only sperm transport and also the lubrication process, not in terms of any other function of estrogen as such, but it will just possess those things which are like which for which the cervix is responsible for, they will be enhanced. Then forming mucus plug during pregnancy. Mucus plug is nothing but just a kind of a blob of mucus, uh, which is not allowing as such any mucus to get secreted further. It is kind of inhibitory in mechanism, so that no more mucus is secreted during the pregnancy phases. So that is the function of the mucus plug. So these are the four different functions of the cervical mucus, out of which the first two are the most important one, that is lubrication during the sexual intercourse and the transport, help in the transport of the sperm from the male. Then the walls of the uterus is composed of three layers, like I had shown you in the diagram: perimetrium, outermost; myometrium, middle one; and endometrium is the innermost. So outer thin covering of the peritoneum, that is through which the uterus is attached to the body wall, that ultimately forms the perimetrium in terms of outer wall of the uterus. Myometrium is the middle thick layer of the smooth muscle fibers, which undergoes contraction during childbirth. So myometrium is the one which will be responsible for the labor pain, you can say, or even the just labor for that matter. Endometrium is the inner glandular layer, and this is again epithelial in nature, that lines the uterine cavity. So the innermost part of the uterus, which is kind of a hollow portion, that will be lining with the endometrium. And during the menstrual cycle, it is endometrium which undergoes cyclic changes. It increases in terms of its thickness because the epithelial cells undergo proliferation, and that will go out at the end of the menstruation if the fertilization has not happened. So these are the three layers and its function. The overall function of uterus is obviously, to receive the ovum from the oviducts or the fallopian tubes. It is also responsible for formation of the placenta after the fertilization, and as during the development of the fetus inside the mother's womb. And like that placenta is attaching to the fetus obviously and expels the baby at the birth, that is the delivery of the child. So these are the various functions of the whole uterus as an organ. Okay, again a pause. Do you have any questions here? I hope this part was clear as well. If you have any question, you can surely ask. Okay, if there are no questions, then we can move further. So the next and probably the last structure in terms of the female reproductive system is vagina. That is the fibromuscular stretchable tube. Fibromuscular because it is made up of fibers, like the connective fibers, connective tissue, as well as the muscular tissue. That is, and it is stretchable so that it extends also in terms of its thickness and so on. So it is a tube which is 7.5 to 10 centimeter in length and extending from the cervix to the outermost opening, or it is also called as the vestibule on the outer side. Vestibule is again a common terminology. It means the outer opening of a particular structure. So from uterus to the vestibule on the outer side, that is the vaginal structure. The opening of vagina is also called as vaginal orifice. Yeah, so it's also called as vaginal orifice, and it is bounded by a fold of mucosa called as hymen. Now, I assume that you would have heard of this hymen, which is just a thin, fibrous, like a layer or a membrane, which is present at the vagina, and it is considered to be like sign of virginity, which is not at all the true case, because I'm sure you are aware that the hymen can break open due to any excessive or rigorous physical activity, and that can just rupture. So hymen is that thin layer of the tissue which is present at the vaginal orifice. Uh, just to show you this particular diagram, again in terms of hymen is located at towards the anal side, that is on the back side. On the front side it is the clitoris, and then there are different folds of structure which we'll see I guess in the next slides, in terms of labia majora, labia minora. These are just small folds of the skin. Labia majora is just little thicker, labia minora is little thinner, a fold of skin that is present around the vaginal orifice. Opening of the urethra, which is within this labia majora and minora structure, and which is right next to the vaginal opening. So that is the whole structure of this vagina. Then the function obviously it provides the passage for the menstrual flow during the menstruation phases of a woman. Then also receives the penis during the copulation. Again, copulation means sexual intercourse. This is another scientific word to sexual intercourse. So to receive the penis during the sexual intercourse and serve as a birth canal at the time of delivery. So during the birth, obviously the child, if it is a natural course of delivery, the fetus or the baby would move from the uterus through the vaginal canal to the outside of the body. So that is vagina. Then yeah, here we'll cover all those layers. So vulva is the external genitalia, and again it is not a reproductive like the structure or the organ which takes place in the reproduction, but rather it is just the structural as well as the physical like present physically present organ part. So vulva is the human like in the human female consists of mons pubis. Again there are several parts: mons pubis, labia majora, labia minora, clitoris and hymen. So whatever we had seen as vagina, it's just this opening, that is the vaginal opening, and rest all these structures together they form this vulva structure. So mons pubis, it's a cushion of fatty tissue covered by skin and the pubic hair, and this is actually located right next to the clitoris structure as well. So that is mons pubis. Labia majora, that is they are also called as large lips because they look like large lips. It is a pair of thick folds of skin containing pubic hair and sweat glands, and also the sebaceous gland. Sebaceous gland mostly responsible for secretion of the waxy or mucus-like substances. Sweat glands, because of course they secrete the sweat. Uh, so these folds they lie on the either side of the vagina, so that it acts as a kind of covering for the vaginal structure. Then labia minora, which is also called as small lips, and these are the two small folds of the mucous membrane lying on the inner side of labia majora, and they are devoid of any hairs, that is pubic hair or sweat gland, but are very very rich in terms of sebaceous gland, that is the mucus secreting gland. And the above two folds they are equivalent to the male scrotum, that is labia majora and labia minora. They are equivalent to the male scrotum. It has no correlation as such in terms of function, but like how the testis is being protected by the scrotum, the vaginal structure or the internal structure of the uterus as well as cervix as well as vagina is being protected by this labia majora and labia minora. That's why it is equivalent, it is same. Clitoris, that is the next part in the vulva. This is like a small erectile and highly sensitive organ. Again, in case of male, uh, this is something similar to the glans penis. That's where the lot of nerves they are opening up or they are present. It is similar to clitoris. So it is erectile and highly sensitive because of the presence of the nerves. It is located at the uppermost angle of the vulva, that is at the front side on the top part. In front of the urethral opening, like I had shown in this diagram, this is where the clitoris structure is located. Then you have urethral opening, and when you go down or on the back side, that is the vaginal opening, and then the hymen. So that's how the structural arrangement is. It is equivalent to male penis, like I said, not to the whole penis, but rather glans penis itself, because of the nerve sensation and being highly sensitive to the any stimulus. Vagina will open outside by an opening into a depression, and that is called as vestibule. Like I had said earlier, vestibule is nothing but the outer opening of any particular tubular structure. So that's also present in the vagina between the vulva, that is between the vulva, as in this opening is present between this labia minora, labia majora, and so on both sides, and that is why it is in between the vulva structure. So that is what it is saying. So vestibule of the vagina is present within the vulva structure. The urinary meatus, that is the urethral opening, is in the vestibule. Again, vestibule is opening for any tubular structure from inside to outside of the body. So urinary meatus is also something similar, which is present in that whole of the vulva structure. Is situated, sorry, is situated below the clitoris and above the vaginal opening. Again, sorry, the spelling is wrong here, but the urinary meatus, like I had shown in the diagram, it is present between, on top it is clitoris, and on back side it is the vaginal opening. And thus a human female, in the human female, urethra and genital ducts, they have separate opening. Like in case of male, we have a common urethra for semen as well as for the urine, starting with that ejaculatory duct, right? After ejaculatory duct, rather. So in case of female, they have completely separate opening and they are nowhere connected to each other as such. So that is the vulva structure. And the last part in the vulva, that is the in virgin state. Now again, like I had mentioned specifically, that's not really true always, but in general we can assume so. So in the virgin state, a thin membranous diaphragm, diaphragm is nothing but a layer. The hymen is present at the vaginal orifice, starting from the back end or from the back side towards the front part. A slit in the hymen allows the menstrual flow to pass out. When it is unbroken, when the hymen is intact, you can say there is only a slit which will allow the menstrual flow to pass out. Again, you might imagine hymen as a complete covering. It is not a complete covering, rather it is just a fold of membrane which is present at the back side of the vulva structure. It may rupture by a sudden jerk, cycling, horse riding in some women, and hymen persists even after coitus. Coitus is again copulation or sexual intercourse. So in some of the women, this hymen may remain intact even after the sexual intercourse. So that's when I said it is not actually a sign of virginity at all. It is just the structural requirement of the vulva structure. Yeah, the last statement says so. The presence and or absence of hymen is not reliable indicator of the virginity. Okay. Any question in these structures so far, either in vulva or vagina or any of these? Okay. So if no questions, then we can move on to the next part, which is still a physical structure of the female reproductive system. That is accessory glands which are present and which are responsible for secretion of the female reproductive system. So first one is Bartholin's gland, or it is also called as vestibular gland. Now these are two bean shaped, uh, one on either side of the vaginal orifice, not on the outer side, but it is rather inner, inner as in terms of not literally too much of inside. It is just at the edge of the vaginal structure. That's what is Bartholin glands in terms of location. They secrete the lubricating fluid and open into the vestibule. So they will secrete this lubricating fluid at the vaginal orifice, so that the there will be like during the course of sexual intercourse, this lubrication can help in the easier penetration of the penis structure into the vagina. So that is the function of this Bartholin's gland, and it secretes a clear viscid, viscid means a little viscous alkaline fluid under the sexual excitement. So either during the sexual intercourse or even during the masturbation phases, these liquid, they are being secreted by the Bartholin's gland, or what is so called as vestibular glands. Uh, so that is the first type of accessory gland. Then the mammary glands. In case of, like, this fact as well, all the mammals, they have this mammary gland. So milk producing modified sweat glands. The mammary glands are nothing but the modified sweat glands. So instead of secreting sweat, they will synthesize the milk and they will like secrete it. So milk producing modified sweat glands, which occurs in two rounded thoracic protuberances. Now this is a very scientific terminology for the breast description. That is rounded thoracic because they are located in the thoracic region, and protuberance means the outgrowth or the extension. So that is the two rounded thoracic protuberances, they are called as breast, and they have pads of fatty tissues. Like the inner linings of the breast, they have quite some fatty tissues, so that the mammary glands, they are being supported by this fat uh, fatty tissues. At puberty, the mammary glands, they begin to develop in females. So obviously this is one of these secondary sexual characteristics that develops in female during the puberty, or as and when the puberty starts, the mammary gland starts to like develop under the influence of estrogen and progesterone hormone. So like the whole of the reproductive system, it starts to generate these hormones, which in turn cause effects on the mammary gland, and that's how the breast structures develop over the time. In males, they are present in the rudimentary form. That means they are not functional at all. They are present, the mammary glands, but they are not functional at all, and they don't even develop like the breast in the female. But if at all, like you have heard of, I'm sure you have heard of certain cases where the some of the people, they do transgender operation. So from male to female, when they want to convert their whole body system, they develop breast. That is happening by the injections of estrogen and progesterone, but they do develop the breast structure. Now, if the mammary glands would not have been present in the male, it would have been very difficult to develop those breast structure in the male candidates. But because they are already present, it's just the simple hormonal stimulation that is required to develop this breast structure, even in case of male, or you can say transgender person. So that is the mammary gland. Now each breast has an erectile nipple surrounded by a circular dark pigmented area called areola. Now if I have to show you, of course, this is the nipple, that is the opening, you can say, and areola, this is the small area which is present around the nipple in circle, which is little darker compared to the rest of the breast structure. So that is areola structure. And numerous sebaceous glands, like also called as areolar glands, they are present on the surface of this areola. So breast, in terms of the outermost appearance, it has erectile nipple and the areola structure, which is more pigmented area. And this areola structure has the sebaceous gland, or also called as areolar gland, present on its surface. The glandular tissue, glandular means gland like tissue which secretes milk later. This glandular tissue of each breast is divided into 15 to 20 mammary lobes. Lobes are again compartments. So So there are 15 to 20 such compartments within each breast, and they are separated by the adipose tissue. That's where the fat can also accumulate, and it is also consisting of the dense connective tissue, because these tubes, they are internally connected, like next to the nipples later, and that is why it is this connective tissue and adipose tissue, they are present. Adipose tissue is more of a structural, like just cushioning effect, and the connective tissue is more to hold all these tube like structures within the breast together. So each mammary lobe consists of number of lobules. It's same like how we had studied the ovary, and ovary has lobules and compartments and so on. This breast structure is something similar as well. So breast has mammary lobes, and each lobe has again a several lobules with glandular or secretory alveoli. Now this alveoli has nothing to do with the lung alveoli. Alveoli simply refers to a porous structure. That is what is the meaning of alveoli, and that is why in breast also we have this glandular alveoli structure. The cells of the alveoli, they will secrete milk, which is stored in the lumen of the alveoli. Again, lumen means a tube-like structure or the internal part of the tube. So the milk which is secreted by the cells of the alveoli, they will be stored in the lumen of the alveoli, which further opens into the mammary tubules. Okay, let me finish and then I'll go back to the diagram to explain these things again. So just again briefly, each breast will have mammary lobes. Each lobe will have again lobules, and these lobules will have several of the alveolar cells which will secrete milk and also store it into the lumen. And the tubules, so alveoli, they will open into the tubules, and these tubules of each lobe will join to form the mammary ducts, right? So ultimately these tubules or mammary duct structures, they are present in the lobules or lobes of the mammary gland. Yeah, so do not get confused here that these two are running parallel or something like that, but within the whole compartment of the breast itself, there are several of these tube like structure which are called as tubules, and they will join to form mammary ducts. Mammary ducts will further join to form mammary ampulla, and they will be connected to the lactiferous duct, which is the outermost opening, opening it through the nipple structure, through which the milk is sucked out. So, where is the diagram? Yeah, here. So, if you look now, again, this is the two-dimensional representation. So, be aware when you think about this. All these molecules that they are being shown here like a clouds, they are fat molecules. Mammary lobes, this particular part is called as the lobe. Now if you divide the whole of the breast into different compartments, like breast is kind of dome shaped, so you can imagine how the compartment would be of this shape. That is the mammary lobe, and the alveoli, these are the cellular cells, cellular structure which is secreting the milk. It will carry it from here into the mammary duct, then into the mammary ampulla, which will further join to form the lactiferous duct. That is the main opening at the nipple structure. So that is how they are connected to each other. And again, this is something same like lungs. We have several branches, and then we have alveoli at the end. From, if you start from the nipple, again this is like main tube like structures, like you can see this tube like structure that is being present. Ampulla is nothing but again a little widened tube, so that is ampulla. It becomes particles. Oh, were you not able to see my screen? I just received a message, participants can see your screen now.
No, sir, we were able to see your screen.
Okay, okay, strange message. Fine. So the these tubes at the nipple, they are little thickened in terms of their diameter, and that is what is known as ampulla. They continued further into mammary duct and like branching, of course, branching further and continuing, and then further branching will lead them to the alveolar structure, and they will have alveolar cells and so on. So that is how the structural arrangement, and each of these lactiferous duct, let's say for example, if we talk about this lactiferous duct, it is present in one compartment or one lobule of the mammary gland, and similarly the others will also be present. So it's again something similar. In one compartment you have all this tube like structure which is at the end having alveolar present at them, and again at the back side you have ribs to support the muscles between the intercostal muscles between the ribs and the pectoralis major muscle. This is like the continuation of that abdominal muscle. So these are the different structures on the back side as well as throughout the mammary gland. Any questions in mammary glands?
So could you go back to the previous slide? Like,
This one?
yeah, yeah. So each compartment will have a separate lactiferous duct, or there will be one common lactiferous duct?
There will be one common at the end.
So
Lactiferous duct will join together at the end.
so there will be many of them that join.
Yeah, you can say so.
Okay.
What time is it? It's 2:19. Yeah, we can finish some more. So that is all about the mammary glands. Then the important part with respect to the milk secretion or ejection of the milk. That is how it is being termed as. So the main function of the mammary gland is of course to secrete and eject milk. Of course, again to synthesize as well, synthesize, secrete or eject. Uh, and this is called as lactation. The secretion or ejection and ejection, that is called as lactation. So lactation is a phenomena which is associated with pregnancy. Otherwise, the lactation does not happen in female until and unless it is stimulated externally with some hormone. But in general, like on a wider perspective, pregnancy is the only case where the lactation can happen. And of course, after pregnancy, it is followed by the childbirth. So that is when the lactation happens. So milk production is stimulated by the hormone which is called as prolactin, and this hormone is secreted by the anterior pituitary gland. That is the front part of the that is this is the milk production, that is synthesis of the milk is stimulated by prolactin, and on the other hand the ejection of the milk uh, like after the childbirth, that is after the baby is born, is stimulated by the hormone known as oxytocin, and this is released by the posterior pituitary gland. So posterior pituitary gland will secrete oxytocin, then only the milk ejection would start happening, and the production is controlled by prolactin. These are the two important hormones which functions during the what we call lactation phase. Secretion of the milk is also stimulated by the psychological state of the mother. In different languages we have common colloquial terminologies for this, but by looking at the baby or by thinking of the baby, even during the pregnancy phase, the mother would start ejecting the milk through the breast structure, or even during after the childbirth, this can happen as well. So that is the psychological stimuli. So in that case, what happens is the amygdala is stimulated. It will in turn stimulate the posterior pituitary gland, and then it will cause the ejection of the milk, because it is the psychological state of the person. So that's how it functions. Nursing mother, that is a mother who has a baby and is continuously feeding the baby, can secrete up to 1 to 2 liters of the milk per day, and that is actually quite a lot of amount in terms of milk production. So that is 1 to 2 liters of the milk per day. That much of the milk is secreted by the nursing mother. The first milk after the childbirth is specifically called as colostrum. I assume you have heard of this term. It is the same term in case of, even in case of animals, and there is a specific milk product that is being made out of colostrum, especially if it is of cow or buffalo. Like people, those who has them, they usually take out this colostrum, that is the first secretion after the birth of the baby, and then they make milk products and give it to the people so that they can have it. Now, why it is so important to talk about colostrum? Because it is one of the most important secretion for the immunity of the baby. We'll talk about those different factors. So colostrum is produced in low quantities in first few days postpartum. Now postpartum is again another new word or new terminology. Post means after, partum means delivery of the baby. So after the delivery of the baby, it is also called as postnatal. That is, natancy is the pregnancy time. So prenatal and postnatal, that is before birth and after birth. Something similar after birth is also called as postpartum. So colostrum is produced in low quantities in the first few days after the birth of the baby, that is postpartum, is very rich in the immunologic component. Immunologic component means different immune
So your microphone is turned on.
I hope now I'm audible. So this colostrum is highly rich in immunologic components, specifically the IgA. So there are several of these immunoglobulins which are short form as Ig, and IgA is one of the important immunoglobulin giving the immunity to the baby. Again, there are AB and there are several such letters. There are several such types of immunoglobulins, and they have very specific functions as well. I'm not sure if we'll study these ones. Maybe in the diseases part we might look at these different types. But as of now, we'll just look at this. The colostrum contains the secretory IgA. Lactoferrin is another protein which has like different functions in terms of lactation. Leukocytes, again, you know what leukocytes are, or white blood cells, as well as the developmental factors such as epidermal growth factor. It is short form as EGF. Epidermal, that means the outer layers of the any organ, and the factor which is responsible for growth of this epidermis region. So that is EGF. It does not just have this growth function, but it also has other function in terms of cell communication or cell differentiation and so on. So this colostrum is important because it has all these components present within it, and that is why it gives a very good push for the development as well as the immunity within the baby. And that is why also it is said that first milk secretion after the childbirth should be given to the baby. Whether it is animal species or whether it's a human species, it is always preferred so that the offspring gets all that colostrum part. But of course, in case of animals, humans take it away and the baby doesn't get it. But in case of human, at least thankfully those babies get it, so they are benefited from. The principal proteins of the human milk, that is like casein, which is present in the cow milk or buffalo milk as well. So that is the casein, which is a type of protein, and this is homologous to the bovine beta casein. Again, beta casein is a different structural different part of the casein molecule, and bovine refers to the cattle family. So there are two types of categories: bovine and calf, CALF. So this calf and bovine, these two part. Bovine refers to the adult cattle, and calf refers to the younger or the very like recently born cattle. So that is calf and bovine. So this casein from this human milk is similar to the casein from the cattle family. It also has different proteins like lactoferrin, lactalbumin, immunoglobulin A, lysozymes, and serum albumin, and so on. So again, you need not remember all these names, but simply you can remember the casein, which is most important protein. In terms of sugar, milk always has lactose as its sugar, and that is also present in this milk. So I guess I will stop here as of now. In the next class, we will start with the gametogenesis part, like again, in terms of sperm as well as the ova, how does it happen? Do you have any questions here so far?